Good morning. It's time to calibrate, and this is episode 51. You know what that means? It means we're only 2 weeks away from our 2-year anniversary. That's a cotton anniversary, Bob. Have you got your cotton ready?
Cotton is ready. Cotton candy in particular, actually.
Perfect. We should do this one in person, actually. Unfortunately, it's just Bob and me here this morning, but Mark is sure to be back for our anniversary episode. In his place today, we have a special guest. Welcome, Rob Anderson.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Brent and Bob.
Hey, we're very happy to have you here this morning. Rob is best known in watch circles by his online handle Powerfunk. He serves as managing editor and previously senior editor of Grey Market magazine. That's the editorial arm of Luxury Bazaar. He is also the longtime lead moderator of the very active Reddit community r/Rolex, one of the largest Rolex-focused communities on the internet. Rob, before we get in too deep, why don't we start things off with a wrist check? You have the floor, sir.
All right. Well, I did come ready for this. I came double wrist, and just for Brent,
Nice.
the caliber 321 guy, I do have a 321 Omega.
Oh, very
This is
nice.
my,
Very nice.
66. It's not super collector grade. It's got a scraped dial. A lot of people don't realize early Speedmaster dials have white paint underneath the tritium because they knew the tritium would wear out. It wasn't a mystery to them at that point. So really, they're designed to have the tritium scraped off and you see the white paint underneath. So collectors don't go wild for it, but that's what this is. And it was actually serviced in Switzerland. I sent it to Swatch, New Jersey. Swatch, New Jersey actually said we need to service this in Switzerland. So I'm like, cool. So they handled sending it to Switzerland and everything. And they had a remark, dial may remain in present condition.
Wow.
So it's like, all right, Omega Switzerland says it's cool. So, but yeah, the bezel's not original. The hands aren't original, but it's got the 321 in there. So, and on my other wrist, I have an Abercrombie and Fitch Oyster. This is the first Rolex product sold in America, to my knowledge. It was in the mid 1930s. Abercrombie must not have been thrilled with them because they moved to Hoyer soon after that for their sports watches. But yeah, I do think that was Rolex's first foray into the American market was through Abercrombie and Fitch, which is kind of funny.
Those are two really fantastic pieces. And by the way, since it's not collector grade, if you ever get tired of it, I'll send you my address and you know where to put it. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, Bob, what about you?
So a friend of Brent and myself, Tyler, recently took a role in marketing for Citizen Canada and then subsequently all of the sub-brands of Citizen. And he sent me a watch from a brand I was kind of surprised to be getting in front of the camera, a Caravel. They just released recently, I think last year, a Sea Hunter reissue of one of their Sea Hunters from the 60s. And it's super affordable, fun. I've been wearing the heck out of this thing. So shout out to Tyler for connecting me up with this watch. I've been really enjoying it. What about you, Brent?
Well, I'll just jump in on that Tyler comment, actually. It's pretty cool because since he joined Citizen, of course, he's been sending some stuff our way here at the Calibrated Wrist. And the first one he sent over was the ProMaster Land GMT. And it's one of those EcoDrive quartz watches. And I really, really liked it. But the article that went up the other day has just absolutely gone viral. So it's funny how you can tell sometimes what people are searching for because the organic search is crazy for that little piece. You know, like I think it's maybe Canadian, $580 or something like that, you know, but very cool. So I'm glad he sent it over. On my wrist, I have something fairly ubiquitous as well. This is the Seiko SPB 147, and I have it on the Zulu Diver, that octopod system there this morning, which I really like.
Nice.
And I was just down at the lake this morning and taking some shots of it. Actually, I posted them on Instagram this morning, but it's one of my favorite pieces, actually, personally, and it's the very first watch that I ever took scuba diving.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
All right. So, Rob, as I understand it, you have built yourself a bit of a reputation within the Rolex community as something of a historian, a market observer, and one might say a collector advocate. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Grey Market publication and what it is that you do there?
Sure. So I guess that is an accurate description. Thank you, Brent. So yeah, I am the managing editor of Grey Market magazine, which, as you said, is Luxury Bazaar's blog, basically. There's also, of course, Grey Market video content, which is more well known with Roman Sharf and, of course, Adrian and Gary and the gang that is is done well online, and that's pretty cool. But we really try to make content that people search for. There's a lot of blogs that get bigger destination traffic. People maybe logging on to Fratello or Hodinkee just every day just to kind of read whatever. But we've mostly always been pretty like subject driven, SEO driven. Like the whole idea for it was thought up by Luxury Bazaar's SEO guy. So shout out to Shane Friedman. No, I wouldn't be, doing this if it weren't for him. He just found me on Reddit and was like trying to get the gray market thing going and needed some authors and thought I'd be good. So, and it's fun. I'm writing about watches on forums for free anyway. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll sell you an article, and sold them a couple articles. And then they're just like, do you want like a full-time workload? And I'm like, okay. But yeah, it was a good timing for me. I was, sort of chilling at the time. So now I'm writing about watches, and yeah, no, it's been fun. Although it has been brutal the past couple years with the whole AI thing. I don't know if you hear about this. We'll just not to talk about AI itself, but just the AI search results. I don't know if the regular population knows how much that has been brutal for written online content creators, and how a lot of people are down 50% or way more from their peak Google search traffic.
Yeah. We've actually talked about it on the podcast before with a couple of other guests. And I know even here at the Calibrated Wrist, we haven't really experienced it as much as others, but what we're really trying to do to combat that is to give something, a little bit more than the specs and the things that AI can cut you out of. So maybe it's fantastic photography, or maybe it's a really cool insider story or a backstory or that sort of thing. But I noticed that in your writing, you kind of do that too. You've been super prolific over the last few years, like writing like sometimes 3-4 articles a week, which is pretty fantastic. So it's really cool that you're able to fall into that niche. It's fantastic. You spend also time in kind of 3 different worlds: the Rolex community, like watch journalism, and then of course the secondary market itself. What are collectors talking about today that the watch industry itself maybe hasn't yet noticed?
Well, I do think collectors are less averse to quartz now. I think there's a ton of competition in the under $1,000 range now, as you guys have covered so many awesome micro brands. And I think there's maybe a little bit of a hole in the like $1,000 to $3,000 space. Like the $1,000 to $3,000 seems like the most underserved market right now. I guess Corona is a good example of they're killing it sort of right in the middle of that price point, where you get a Miyota and then you're sort of paying for the dial, which I don't mind. As long as you're getting something for the money, what you're getting is the dial, pretty much. And
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Corona. I think it's priced reasonably for what it is. But there aren't a ton of things with an interesting value proposition in the like 15 to 2,500 range. I think that's maybe why Studio Underdog's doing so well. There's like a lot of people looking to buy a $1,500 cool watch, and they're doing it.
I think that if you look at Longines too, and their recent Hydro Conquest release, obviously there's a lot of reasons that people like that watch, but certainly the price point has been the huge draw, around what, 2,200 maybe American, a little bit more than that Canadian, obviously, but huge draw as a result.
I will say I didn't expect quite the response that it got. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think it's fine. It's cool. But yeah, it got more pop online than I expected, for sure. People seem to be digging it.
Absolutely.
Longines is doing okay these days.
Brent mentioned that you're sort of spend time in 3 worlds within the watch world. There's a whole other world that you're a part of, though I just want to talk about a little bit. I know, even though this is more of obviously a watch podcast, but you're also in the world of stand-up comedy. What's kind of the origin story on that? And are you still actively performing, or?
Yeah, I am. I've been doing comedy for about a decade or so. Not that I'm in the place where some of my comedy peers are who started at the same time, but you can't really worry about that in comedy. It's a lot of them don't have kids. Most of them don't have kids. There are very few of my stand-up comedian friends going to, shows every night and doing shows constantly have kids. There's a couple, but no, it's been fun to do. I had a friend that I knew I used to do the my high school's improv comedy troupe. So I knew a guy from that who asked me what I was doing in comedy, and I was like, nothing. And he's like, why not? And I'm like, oh, I guess. That was sort of the thing in the back of my mind. I'm like, why not? Why am I not doing anything with comedy? But no, it's fun. And now in stand-up, you sort of have to have an online presence to do anything.
Yeah.
And, the handful of comedians I know that have sort of blown up to the point of being able to get to that sort of touring level, or, regardless of the size of your show, to be able to tour is pretty cool. And, you need to blow up online to do that. And there's a whole class of kind of old heads, old seasoned comedians that I think younger people may not even realize exist out there doing cruise ships and out there doing the American Legion shows that people don't even know exist. Like, it was seasoned, amazing comics. But it seems like to break through, you got to have the online presence, which I guess is why I'm here. I don't know, tying that into that is because of my viral video on Instagram from my stand-up comedy account is why I'm here. To mention that. But yeah, I guess you guys
like weekly still, or like how often are you getting up on stage?
Yeah, about once a week. Try to get it more than that, but that's sort of my minimum, just to stay up there. Last time I was going to do a bar show, it was this week, but it was during a World Cup day. There were just so many Scotland fans just yelling and chanting. It was just like, well, I guess a comedy show is not occurring here tonight. It was just amazing. All the comedians just sat around drinking, just observing the Scottish people, and it was better than any comedy show ever. It was great.
There's been a whole lot of coverage on that up here in Canada too. The whole Scottish crowd down there.
It's real. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. So where do you actually perform? What club are you perform at?
Well, club is, the goal. There's mostly bar show. It's funny. There's sort of open mics. Everybody just goes to open mics, and then there's booked shows, and AKA showcases, where you're doing 8 to 12 minutes at your friend's shows, wherever they convince somebody to host. Like a buddy of mine in the town I'm at hosts a show like once a month on Thursdays. So he'll have me, go do 10 minutes a lot of times when he's doing that show. And he packs the place. It's at this random, just like restaurant, but like he sells tickets online, promotes it on Eventbrite, whatever. He does what he does to pack the place. So there's sort of that tier of show. There's sort of open mic, showcase at random location, small club, big club.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done, a few minutes at a random small club. The Comedy Studio is cool. But then there's Laugh Boston, which is sort of the A club, and I haven't been passed at Laugh Boston yet. That's sort of in stand-up comedy, when you've been cleared that you're good enough to perform at a club, that's called being passed. So that'd be a long-term goal to get like passed at an A club would be cool. But someday I'll do, showcases and stuff for fun too. Nothing wrong with that.
Since we're sort of chatting origin story with the stand-up, how did you get into watches in the first place? Where did that all start for you?
I loved my digital watches as long as I can remember. I remember loving my Casio digital watches. I had a pre-G-Shock and then a G-Shock. And then when I was in high school, my parents bought me a two-tone Citizen with airline miles. I think it was literally like United airline miles that my mom had that were going to expire. So she cashed them in for this, quartz Citizen that I wore all through high school. And then my parents gave me a Zodiac, a quartz Zodiac, when I graduated high school. That's what I wore for most of college. And, when you live in Boston in the early 2000s going to college, great time to be a weed dealer. I enjoyed that heyday. So I will say, in college, I did get my first Rolex Submariner. I had the 16610 back when that was new. It was about 20 years ago.
Yeah,
or a little more now. Time flies. But yeah, that was my everyday watch for just about 2 years. I just loved it. I'd always loved watches. I remember once I went to Switzerland with my parents. I went into a Rolex store and I saw the Submariners. I'm like, that's awesome. But, my parents didn't buy them. It's not like my parents, had Rolex money at the time or anything. I just thought, wow, that's awesome. So that was probably at the back of my mind somewhere. And then once I had one, I'm like, this is awesome. And then I think it was about 3 years of just being completely happy with this one Submariner on my wrist to getting on the forums and then starting to read rolexforums.com every day and eventually winning a Speedmaster. It's like, well, it seems like these guys say Speedmasters are awesome too. And I think this was my second nice watch after my sub, got into a Speedy, and then I sort of got into small vintage Rolexes like the Pool Interdrill Air King. I have a Rolex with the oil company's logo on it. I think one of the first things I wrote about Rolex was about the Domino's Air King. I remember when I was first on forums about 15 years ago, Domino's Air Kings went for less than regular Air Kings. Like maybe at the time a regular Air King went for $2,000 and the Domino's one would go for $1,800. And now regular Air Kings go for, I don't know, $3,000 to $4,000 of that era. And the Domino's ones people are asking 5 figures. I don't know how much the Domino's Air Kings actually move at the 10K plus price point, but people certainly ask it. But yeah, I wrote a whole Rolex forums post about all the variants of Rolex Domino's dials. That may have been the first real watch content I ever wrote.
That's cool.
It's interesting, because you're talking about Rolex right now. And prior to the show, when Bob and I were just waiting in the studio, we were talking about Rolex ourselves and the fact that we just feel so like fish out of water in the Rolex world. Like neither one of us is really a Rolex geek. We don't, drop reference numbers. And so we were kind of intimidated by the fact that you were going to come on here. So the question I want to ask is about the gray market where you are right now. It kind of describes itself as being for newcomers, as well as seasoned collectors. So how is it that you make newcomers feel welcome? How do you bring them into the fold?
Well, I don't shy away from using the real terms that collectors use. And I think the hyperlink is one of the great internet inventions. And I think it's okay to just sometimes say, this is a flyback chronograph. Maybe I don't need to explain it every time. The words flyback chronograph can be a link to our article. We've got a thing written about flyback chronograph. So that's pretty simplistic, but it is honestly my approach. I want people to just see the terms that we use. Like I'll very rarely write Rolazor. I'll just say two-tone because it's two-tone. We all call it two-tone. Maybe in parentheses, I'll write Rolazor snarkily. Yeah, and I think people will want to dive in deeper themselves if you treat them like they're sort of on the in club. And if they see a couple terms they don't know, maybe they'll go out and research them. They're grown-ups, I assume. They can do their own research, but I at least want to give them little coherent research stumps they can flesh out themselves if it's not something they're aware of.
Right on. Now, gray market sits kind of at the intersection of journalism, but also commerce. So unlike traditional publications, the core business is about selling luxury watches. Do you guys get a lot of, does market data drive a lot of what you do for your content?
We do look mostly at, typical SEO data. Our SEO guys are always looking at the Google Trends, really just trying to look at topics that are undercovered. Like I was thinking of writing a King Midas guide. I'm like, oh, has anybody written a comprehensive King Midas guide? And like Watch Brothers London killed it. There's an awesome article that just like, it's what I would want to write. I'm like, this is like what I would write if I, would aspire to write. It's done. I probably won't write a King Midas guide. I am writing a Jules Audemars guide because nobody gives a crap about the Audemars Piguet Jules Audemars, even though it was apparently sort of their flagship line for a little while, or for like 2 years they were trying to make it that, and then we're like, never mind. Their first Grand Complication wristwatch was in a Jules Audemars case. And nobody cares because that's how much nobody cares about Jules Audemars. But I think the Jules Audemars are cool. I am an owner. I got a Jules Audemars chronograph, so I'm biased. But anyway, that's just sort of an example of it. And my SEO guy might tell me that there's no freaking volume for Jules Audemars and not to bother with it. But also, if we can own it, then that's good. People will reference you, and AI can't help but reference you if you answer somebody nobody asked. Because AI chatbots they're not to use teleological thinking and apply human characteristics to an algorithm, but it almost is lazy. It doesn't want to do the groundwork of fact finding if it can find somebody that says they found the answer. It'll look for the person that says they have the answer rather than calculating the answer 10 times out of 10. So the question, what was the first Cartier titanium watch? You asked ChatGPT that a few months ago, and it'd be like, oh, I don't know, the first titanium Santos came out a couple months ago, just because nobody had ever clearly said this is the first Cartier titanium watch. But then I did an article on titanium Cartier because there was a new titanium Cartier coming out. There's going to be a million articles on that watch. There might be a surge in interest on titanium Cartier in general. I'm going to write the most comprehensive article on titanium Cartier. So this is my sort of logic. And while we have an article about titanium Cartier watches, but in that article, I say clearly the first titanium Cartier watch was the Declaration in 2004. And now if you ask ChatGPT or any AI, like, what was the first Cartier titanium watch? They'll tell you it was the Declaration in 2004. It confidently knows it now. So it is sort of creepy that you're just putting your knowledge into this Borg that is also sucking up your web traffic by summarizing it so they're not clicking on your links as much anymore. But I mean, it is what it is. We're going to keep driving whatever traffic we can drive. And, you know, the more targeted it is, the more valuable it is. I mean, somebody who's seriously in the market for a Richard Mille clicking the link is worth like 10,000 people clicking the link that have no intention of buying a luxury watch, you know, because like you said, it really is all about commerce. And you know, the luxury watch people are super cool about, you know, letting me just write good content. But I'm also cognizant of you know, the concept that it is entirely based on the concept that ultimately it helps them sell more watches. And if it wasn't, they wouldn't, you know, keep paying me. But they do, and I appreciate that, and keep on doing my best for them.
When you're operating on the retail side of things, what can you see that maybe like other media outlets cannot? What would be the benefit?
Well, sometimes, because I do see access to their inventory, and sometimes cool watches come in, and I'm like, that already sold? Like, before I can even, you know? So sometimes I am a little bit on the leading edge of trends just by seeing how quick some of the stuff sells. We had a Tudor Sport Chrono, one of these chunky, it's almost so out of style, it's back in style again, from 2009-ish, giant bezel, the Tudor Sport Chrono, I forget the reference number, would have sold super slowly not long ago, and man, it was in stock for 5 seconds, which means obviously we should ask for more money. I think we were asking $2,800. There might have been somebody who was dying and would have paid $5. I mean, who knows? That's market forces at work. I'm sure next time they get a Sport Chrono in, they'll ask a few hundred more for it. But yeah, it's crazy how they can't keep Jordans in stock. I mean, that's probably not news to anybody, but they also don't get that many Jordans in stock because people aren't selling them. I see them get a lot of all sorts of brands. But man, the Jordans and Richard Milles sell quick. And they got a lot of insane Patek Philippe's, and they definitely sell a good amount of insane Patek Philippe's over there at Luxury Bazaar. But if I had to put a finger on a trend, I would say whales are trending maybe more towards the Richard Mille and like uber indie side than Grand Complication Patek side at the moment. But yeah, everybody's looking for the next, you know, Rex Heppy, and there's a lot of brands with ridiculous wait lists. It's not even just the ones like Rex Hepp and Kerry Voudelaine, and I'm finding out about new 6-figure indies every day that I haven't heard of that already have wait lists that are closed, that are 11 years long, which is cool. So it does seem like the market for these obscure ultra high-end independents is robust. So the ultra rich are doing well. Good news, everybody.
We were actually kind of wondering, like, how often is there a disconnect between what like enthusiasts are talking about online and in the forums and what people are actually spending money on? Is that a pretty common thing?
You know, I would say there's a pretty good correlation with what forum nerds nerd out about and what actually sells. I mean, I would say it all comes from the same root cause, which is some inherent cool trait. But yeah, maybe there are some uber collectors that are ahead of the curve on some ultra rare stuff. But yeah, we don't feel too much pressure as a sort of unauthorized dealer to really write any, you know, standard fare or blase, positive fare about any particular brand. I mean, we are selling these brands, so it's not like we're going to be complete haters. But if Panerai releases a crappy watch, we'll tell you don't buy that one. We got the good ones in stock. I mean,
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're so SEO driven, and just, and not even just terms like we're just SEO, but just like we want to answer the questions that people are actually asking. If somebody's got a question about watches, especially if nobody else is answering it coherently, we'll answer it coherently, and good things will tend to happen from that.
This might actually lead into my next question. You've dropped a lot of names there: Rolex, Patek, AP, Richard Mille. How much sort of collusion or coordination exists between Luxury Bazaar and what you're doing at the gray market, or even what's happening on Luxury Bazaar YouTube?
Not too much. I mean, there could be more, to be honest. I mean, well, if they get a lot of stock in something, or they have something they want to sell, they'll tell me to write about it, which is cool. I hadn't even heard about Ferdinand Berthoud, and then they got a couple Ferdinand Berthouds in stock. They're like, hey, he's right about Ferdinand Berthoud. I'm like, hell yeah. So yeah, if they have any cool stuff in stock, I'm also happy to write about stuff we have in stock, because we can get awesome photos. They got great photographers on staff there. Shout out to Shayna. I do like writing about stuff they have in stock, which obviously works well for them too. But for the most part, they let me do my thing, and then every once in a while, I'll see Roman do a video where he's clearly kind of using my research as a base, and I'm like, hell yeah, Roman trusts what I wrote. That's, feels good.
So you hinted at this a little bit earlier. You started in the forums. So how did moderating the Rolex kind of lead to professional writing?
Good question. How did moderating a subreddit lead to professional writing? That is the question. It's not the traditional career path. So as I said, was always on Rolex forums. It skews a little bit old. I'm not the young guy on the forums anymore, at least not on Reddit. But I was sort of on the younger side compared to the Rolex forums crowd, particularly at the time. I mean, a lot of the moderators are, retired dudes that were been scuba diving since the 70s, 80s. They've been using sea dwellers since it was a tool. OGs. I'm not an OG to that degree. But a lot of those old guys were. But a lot of them were also so old they get bothered when somebody said Rolly, and somebody's like, "Oh man, it's got me Rolly." Like, it's not a Rolly. It's a brand of camera, not a watch. And I'm like, man, rappers have been calling Rolexes Rollies my entire life. It's not weird to me. So I felt like there was maybe room for a slightly younger oriented Rolex forum on the web. So I started visiting the Rolex subreddit, which was pretty much dead at the time, or it was dead. I think it had maybe 1,000 subscribers at the time, but if anybody posted anything, people would just say, "Oh, this is a dead subreddit. Go into the main watches subreddit." That's pretty much the response. The only thing anybody ever said was, "This is dead. Go to the watches subreddit." Every once in a while, I'd post something, just because. And one day, unexpectedly, I just got a message in Reddit. It's like, "Would you like to be a moderator of r/Rolex? Brolex added you." So there's this guy with the username Brolex. Great username, by the way. Shout out to Brolex. Just unexpectedly added me and this other guy, Sir Laxer, as moderators. Just unexpectedly, I was like, okay, accept, I guess. And then he nuked his account. So he just sort of added us and bounced. I think he just nuked his whole account and dipped. And I was like, sure, this will be fun. And I basically just started from the ground up answering the questions people were asking. It's just like, okay, that's the first challenge. If somebody's in here asking a question, I'll answer it. Like, when did they change from hollow end links to solid end links? And I'd research it. I'd search hollow end links, site rolexforums.com. Find a good thread, research it, and answer it. It's funny looking back, and I did used to do that all the time. People would ask questions, and I'm like, well, at least my goal is to answer all the questions that get asked. And I would have to go research the answers to these questions most of the time. And most of the time I was researching them by typing site:rolexforums.com into my Google search, because that's where all the information was. And then I guess over, enough period of years, I stopped needing to Google the answers to everything I was answering. But no, when I was first made a moderator like 10 years ago, it's not like I was just already a Rolex guru. I mean, I was a Rolex nerd with 2 or 3 Rolexes and a Speedmaster, but I wasn't like some guru. I'm just a forum nerd, and I still am. I'm just a forum dweller through and through.
You were talking about that other fella's cool username. What about your username? Where did that come from?
Well, I do play bass. I slap a little bass.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was my musician name in high school, and I rolled with it. And then actually, when Great Market hired me, I assumed I would write under Rob Anderson because, but the SEO guy is like, no, I've established SEO authority. Powerfunk. Because you got a strategy, just call it Powerfunk. And I'm like, all right, Powerfunk it is.
That's awesome.
I'm Powerfunk. But no, I'm cool with it. It's fun.
Reddit can sometimes be a little bit Wild West. I always kind of watched from an arm's length what was going on in there a lot of times.
That's probably healthier.
Yeah. But what has it taught you about collectors spending so much time running a forum like that?
I mean, if you ignore the more unpleasant noise, honestly, there are a lot of pretty chill collectors. Most of them are pretty normal people, and there's a lot of knowledgeable dudes out there that are happy to help people. And most people, when they have just genuine questions, most people are happy to answer. I'm like, it's easy to focus on the negative comments. It's sort of how our brains are wired. Like the one mean comment will stand out to us more than like the 8 people being helpful. But for the most part, people are surprisingly helpful if given the chance, but not always. That's cool.
So I don't know if this is going to be a tough question because you have to sort of agonize and like pick a child, or whether you just know. So what's your favorite Rolex?
I would say the 1530. That's been my favorite for a while. That's sort of the predecessor to the Land Dweller, the first steel Rolex with a sapphire crystal. It's basically the pre-Oyster Quartz, the Oyster Quartz with the integrated bracelet.
Okay.
For 4 years before the Oyster Quartz came out, presumably because the quartz movement wasn't ready. It's a heck of a movement, even still to this day, thermocompensated. It's a solid quartz movement, the Oyster Quartz movements. But it took them a while to develop that. We take quartz movements completely for granted. We forget that it took years of engineering to make them. They didn't just fall out of the sky. So it took them years to get the movement as good as they wanted it. And it seems like they needed extra vertical space for the quartz movement that they were planning on putting in there. So they filled the 1530 with just an extra deep reho. So it's just kind of a thick, I guess, I don't know if it's reho or chapter ring. I guess it's the reho.
Right.
And I think that's sort of my favorite part, is this sort of oversized slanted edge that was just filling up extra vertical space until their quartz movement came out. But yeah, it was their first integrated bracelet steel watch. And a lot of people think it was biting, the Royal Oak, of course. The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak came out 2 years before that, in 1972. But Gerald Dunta designed the King Midas for Rolex in 1962. And that's, maybe not everybody considers that integrated bracelet, but I sort of consider the King Midas the kind of godfather of the integrated bracelet thing.
Right on. So, I mean, given this almost encyclopedic knowledge that you have gathered from being on these Reddit forums and seeking answers to other people's questions, what Rolex references do you think are maybe misunderstood or underappreciated?
I will always say Yachtmaster 2 for underappreciated.
Okay.
When people say Rolex doesn't make complications, I'm like, bro, they got to watch with a complication nobody else even does. Programmable countdown timer. It's actually great. You can choose the number of minutes you count down from. I actually think it would be a sweet watch to have as a stand-up comedian. I'm doing an 8-minute set. I could set 10, 9, 8. I'm going to count down from 8 minutes. Go. That's awesome. It's actually a useful complication, timing anything from 1 to 10 minutes. That's a pretty cool complication, and it's programmable with the bezel, which is crazy. Actually, the second generation is programmable with the buttons. They have evolved beyond the ring command bezel even, which I guess is a better engineering solution. I haven't held the new Yachtmaster 2 in my hand yet, but yeah, that's definitely one of my picks for underrated modern Rolexes. And I think the Land Dweller is great too. I think the Land Dweller is the greatest Rolex ever. I mean, it's sort of the modern version of the 1530, but if somebody offered to trade me a brand new Land Dweller for my 1530, it'd be a close call. I might stick with the 1530, but the Land Dweller I like a lot.
Great choice.
What do you think of some of there's been a couple of controversial releases the last couple of years, the Jubilee motif for the Celebration dial models. What are your thoughts on those?
I have terrible taste, so I love them. I love the multicolored Jubilee. I thought the Celebration was cool. I like the color dials as soon as they came out, the yellow, the turquoise. People think that like, oh, the turquoise, people were just chasing the hype. Like, no, I went to 3 different ADs like a couple days after it came out just because I thought the turquoise was awesome. Like, turquoise were like sweet. And they were all like, no, we've already been blown up. Our customers have all requested this. Like, you know, they were all nice about it. I wasn't, you know, I didn't feel scorned like, oh, but pretty much right after the turquoise came out, it was impossible to get. I might have waited like 2 days. I should have gone the day of, apparently. And then a lot of people said, oh, it's stupid to buy one for 12,000. They'll go back down. And of course, they, you know, when they went to 40, they did come back down to 20 something, you know, the 41 millimeter turquoise Rolexes. But yeah, no, I like the bright colors. I like the Celebration dial, the multicolored Jubilee. I would love to see that one in person. But yeah, I mean, I wear a Rolex with a, you know, an oil company's logo on it. So that's the context for where I'm coming from.
So, I mean, since like post-pandemic, prices in the luxury market or secondary luxury market have been really erratic, and you know, you get all these social media personalities. They're sort of they're chasing the hype, they're chasing the clickbait, they're having dire predictions for collectors and everything. But what do you think? Is the correction fully played out?
It seems that way. I would describe the current situation as relatively stable. I mean, it's not on some sort of giant upswing, but I don't see any catastrophic collapse either. I mean, the whole watch thing, I mean, I don't see it going away. I mean, there's just something about watches. A lot of people like to buy expensive watches or not so expensive watches. A lot of people are just into watches, and it's not, you know, it's not going to go away completely, you know, at whatever price point, you know, the market evens out to, or multiple price points, obviously. But yeah, it's interesting times. But yeah, it's not that crazy right now. I don't think it's. I'm not saying that the sky is falling, but yeah, certainly, like I said, the Richard Meals and FP Shorns are flying off the shelves. The Greeble Forzies don't need any help selling those. But you know, maybe the 10 to 30,000 is a little slower. The 10 to 30,000 range might not be the hottest right now. But that's just a gut feeling. I need to look at more data to back that up.
So it's now twice that you've mentioned Journe and Richard Mille. Are there any other brands out there that are doing really well that would surprise people?
Well, maybe it's just the nerd circles I'm in, but it seems like high-end Grand Seiko. I mean, it's not news that nerds like Grand Seiko, but I think more serious collectors are considering $50,000 solid gold Grand Seikos maybe than before, and also Creedor. I'm a bit of a Seiko fanboy, so maybe, you know, I'm rooting for the Seiko guys. But man, Creedor does good stuff, and it's pretty cool that Creedor launched in North America this year. So we'll see how Creedor goes. But I would predict Creedor does pretty well here.
Okay.
What about we talked a little bit about some of the independents or micro brands. Has any caught your attention recently that collectors should be paying closer attention to?
Oh man, I do need to up my micro brand game. I'm sure you guys know, you know, way deeper than I do on these. But I mean, I like Laurier. Were they just bought by Worn and Wound? They were.
Yeah, they were absolutely.
Yeah,
just a couple weeks ago.
But you know, good for them. Yeah. Interesting. It'd be weird for me as a, you know, somebody who runs a blog. It would be weird for me if just like, oh, by the way, we own a watch brand now. I'm just like, okay, I guess I'll write awesome things about this brand now. Yeah, and I not to be too much of a hater, you know, business is business, and you know, I wish the Laurier guys all the success, and got no problem with Worn and Wound. So, you know, it's just, yeah, I guess we'll see how that plays out. I do like their designs though. I think micro brands need a good name. Some people downvote me on Reddit when I say Draw Perigo is never going to reach beyond a certain ceiling of success just based on name alone. I mean, you know, the Rolex guy had it right. You know, we need a name that's you know, easily pronounceable, or at least has a cool acronym. JLC's cool. Maybe they could be GP. But I see a lot of micro brands with terrible names, and I'm like, your watch is cool, but I honestly think your name alone might make you fail because this is just a terrible name. And I think some micro brands should consider not putting their name on the dial. I mean, your brand doesn't mean anything to anybody. It means something to the person who bought it, but they know what the brand is because they bought it. Sterile dials are cool. I think, more brands should consider making sterile dials. Bring those back.
I'm not sure if you know the brand Serica, but that's exactly what they do. And I thought that was a bold move, and I think it's a fantastic direction to go as well.
Oh, I have seen these. Yeah. Yeah, Serica is doing good stuff. Oh, Echo Nutra's killing it.
Yeah.
With their kind of tank style watches.
They were just at the Montreal Timepiece show a few weeks ago, and there's one. It's a longer and slightly larger. I can't remember what model it's called. It's one of their larger tank style models, but that was one of my favorite watches at the show. Actually, they're beautiful.
Yeah, very nice.
Beautiful watches.
Yeah, they dropped a really nice limited edition lately. I love to get one of those in hand.
So I just asked you about brands that are doing maybe better than others. Are there ones out there that people champion all the time but are actually doing much weaker than expected?
I would say JLC maybe doesn't sell as well as the enthusiast nerddom well. I think people recommend buying Jaeger LeCoultre more than they do buy Jaeger LeCoultre, maybe a little bit, but no, they do okay. No, my mom's got a JLC. It's a great watch. No, I like what they're doing, and a lot of people think that Jaeger LeCoultre stands for like ultimate premium handmade quality, and it's more about just quality in general. It's not about being handmade. They actually have a history of using machines as much as possible. Like LeCoultre himself in the 1860s was making machines to produce these more efficiently and make more of them. Like that's like their history. It wasn't like we're them one at a time. Like that's the opposite of their history. But they do it well. I would put them on par with Rolex as far as just like high grade, mostly factory made and then hand completed kind of thing. And they are, they're not at Longo and Zona's price point. That's what Longo and Zona is for, and JLC's down there, and they should be. But I think some collectors mentally put them on a weird pedestal. But I do like them. I do like JLC. But maybe don't sell as fast as some of the other brands outside of the Roberto. Robertos do sell well. Okay. But master compressor might sit out for a little bit. Hey, you can get good deals on them. Master compressors, I think they're a great value, honestly.
We made a little foray into comedy earlier, and so I might like to follow up with talking about the Rolex wait list if we could.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people online, social media influencers, or everything. They, especially in the watch world, do a lot with the Rolex wait list. There's memes out there. There's all kinds of interesting videos and everything. But you've actually written, intelligently about this. And I believe you're even part of that waitlist calculator that you guys have. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how it works?
Yeah, so I believe, I hope this is still the case, but if you type in Rolex waitlist, my article should be the number one result on Google. Work hard for that. But I think it's interesting that even Morgan Stanley cites our wait time megathread. I remember, just to give you the history of the wait time megathread, maybe people don't realize, longtime collectors do, but if you've only been collecting watches for a little while, I may not realize how relatively recent the Rolex waitlist phenomenon is. So there didn't used to be a waitlist until about 2019 is when the other mods and I realized every time somebody bought a watch, people would be like, how long did you wait? How long did you wait? What's your spending history? How long did you wait? What was your spending history? So just like, okay. Let's, instead of asking people this on every watch post, let's just make a mega thread of it. And then we've been doing that every year since. And it's funny, Morgan Stanley even uses this in their data. You have to sort of, click through the footnotes to see that it is actually referencing it. But this is where it's coming from. This random Reddit thread is now sort of the authoritative data source of Rolex wait times. But yeah, it's a whole phenomenon. And a lot of people think that, oh, a Rolex, if people didn't have this waitlist game, then people wouldn't even want a Rolex. It's like, no, they wanted Rolexes so bad even before this that there became a waitlist. Like, actually, like it didn't come out of the blue. I'm not saying there aren't some shenanigans and some nonsense, but I mean, for the most part, it really is just a demand. And to your point, the memes and the amount of content online about the Rolex waitlist, as funny as it is sometimes, I think has given people a little bit of an exaggerated impression of the level of absurdity. Like, it's not a complete clown show where just people punch you in the face and tell you can't buy a watch, which is like what some people seem to believe it's like. I've been told that no, we don't, like I said with the turquoise Oyster Perpetual, but never in a way that really rubbed me the wrong way. And I think most jewelry stores, most Rolex authorized dealers are running a business you or I would. I like to think, they're valuing their longtime customers. If somebody spent tons of money with me, would I give them a Daytona over a random person? I mean, of course. And, do I think a certain percentage of watches end up on the gray market? Yeah, I've been estimating like probably 5% of Rolexes for years. I think it's a good estimate. I'd be willing to bet I'm in the right ballpark with 5%. But it's not like 60%. Like some people think, oh, ADs just backdoor these to the gray market. No, why would they? They could just charge anybody off the street full price for these. Why would they risk any of that? And it's not so much about kickbacks. I mean, I'm not naive enough to think Luxury Bazaar doesn't get a new watch from an AD from time to time, but the vast majority of their stock really is just used watches and watches that people trade in. Like, and if they're getting a couple of nice Rolexes from an AD, maybe they're also getting a couple other watches that are moving slower. It's sort of just like it. Inventory turnover and cash flow and inventory is a constant concern for these businesses. So it's really more a helping amount with cash flow most of the time, and not just this nefarious, I'm going to get a kickback because they sell for a premium on the gray market. It's all kickbacks. Don't you know it? And that's sort of the social media impression a lot of people get. But I think it's more moving inventory than kickbacks. But not that kickbacks haven't happened. A lot of people say, haven't you heard of CD Peacock in Chicago? CD Peacock in Chicago? I'm like, yes, this one lawsuit in 2019, and there are more lawsuits stemming from it, but it's all really from this same place doing it. So it has happened. But for the most part, a Rolex license is a license to print money, and nobody wants to risk shenanigans. And Rolex really is out there online looking at serial numbers to see which number, which watches get flipped. So Luxury Bazaar sure as hell blurs out the serial numbers of the watches they sell. Also, just, for privacy reasons in general, I think it makes sense for sellers to blur out serials. And now people online get the idea that they should blur out their serials. And it's just like, well, I mean, unless you just got this from a gray dealer and you're doing the dealer assault, what's a counterfeiter going to do with your serial? A lot of people say don't post your serial number online. I'm sort of in the what does it matter camp, but I guess that's a philosophical question. I've never heard of anybody actually being like, oh man, I tried to sell my Rolex and I ran into this problem because some counterfeiter made a copy of it with the same serial number. I mean, I've never heard of that actually happening. I've heard of people theoretically describing that scenario many times, never heard of it actually happening. So I have heard of people getting busted because Rolex saw a serial number online and knew that watch had been sold. Rolex gets mad at the dealer gets mad at the customer. And again, Rolex doesn't know who the customer is. A lot of people think Rolex has some database of customers. The dealer is their client. They're pissed at the dealer's pissed at you. So, if you got Rolex mad at the authorized dealer, that salesman's probably not going to give you a Royal Oak after that.
Yeah, I mean, even your own calculator has vast space for play. Sometimes it says 4 months to 5 years for a Daytona or something like that. But it's interesting because people sometimes think, or mistakenly think, especially if you're outside the watch sphere, that it's like a queue. I put myself in the queue and I'm just waiting for that to come along. But and then those that are inside the watch space, they realize that it's just an expression of interest. And what bugs them is it's maybe anti-democratic, like, well, why can't I get one, But I like the way you put it. The fact that, you're doing a business here, and this guy is buying many watches from you year after year, maybe several a year. Why wouldn't you want to do him a solid instead of some guy, just random guy that walked off the street? I mean, you're basically cultivating your people, right? So yeah, very cool.
Exactly. And of course you do want new customers too. And people are complaining like, oh, well then how do new customers ever get involved in the brand? And apparently Rolex has written memos to 80s like, hey man, try to reserve some for new customers so it's not hopeless for, new collectors. And it seems like, stores are trying to get people at the, beginning end of that hopefully a trajectory of being a big spender. But yeah, it's there's no perfect method, and I think Japan has tried the more democratic method. I don't know if you've heard about the Japanese lines at Rolex stores.
I
don't know if they're still doing this, but I think Japan was doing like, okay, first come, first serve. And so that just meant there were just hilariously enormous lines. And it's so you sort of pick your poison. I don't know if I have the solution. People are like, why doesn't Rolex just increase production? I'm like, how easy is it, do you think it is to produce these? A figure I often quote is, so say they're around 1.2 million watches a year. Rolex was making 800,000, I think 7-8 years ago. I think less than a decade ago. That's a 50% increase. 400,000 watches a year is how much they've already increased their capacity in recent history. That's more than Omega's entire output, I think, is their recent increase. And they're building 3 more factories. They got 3 more factories. I think 2029 is their scheduled completion date for the 3 new Rolex factories. And I'm like, why are they building 3 new factories if they could just magically make more watches their existing ones? So I am inclined to believe they really are roughly at capacity. I think Morgan Stanley estimated they went down from like 1.3 million to 1.2 million, something like that. And again, these are all estimates, so we don't even know if that's accurate. It's sort of within the margin of error, in my opinion. But I think they probably are really roughly at capacity, at least. And they're just trying to maximize profit like anybody would. If they have a certain number of movements they can produce, they'd rather sell a two-tone Datejust than a steel Submariner if they make more money on the two-tone Datejust. And I don't think that's nefarious. And some people think that they should just make more of whatever has the longest line. But I sort of think that's a fallacy too, is because just because there's a giant line for Submariners doesn't make a woman's desire for a lady Datejust like less important. And they would rather sell to a wide variety of people, men and women of all ages and variety of watches, instead of just being a one watch company like Audemars Piguet is in danger of being. But
by the way, I did Google it, and you're number 1 here in Canada, but also number 2. Your the Rolex
the
waiting list explained 2026 edition is number 2.
All right.
On Google search. So here's the thing: we're talking about the wait list, obviously, but what if the wait list did disappear? Like, what if they doubled or tripled production? Would that be good for the brand, or is the whole scarcity thing kind of part of the experience with Rolex?
I don't think the scarcity thing is as much a part of it as people think. I think it is just a milestone watch. So many billions of people would want a Rolex for a milestone, just for a retirement or a 50th birthday. And we see that all the time on Rolex. It's like, I'm not a big watch nerd. I just thought I'd maybe get a nice Rolex for my retirement or for my son's college graduation or became a doctor, or whatever the milestone is. There are so many non-watch enthusiasts, and I think watch enthusiasts underestimate the size of this market. Non-watch enthusiasts that just want a milestone. And for whatever reason, Rolex, for better or worse, you can argue whether or not it's sort of earned this status, but it does sort of mean something different and beyond other brands. Like gifting somebody a Rolex, that means a little different than giving somebody an Omega, even if objectively the Omega is, say, of equal quality. It's just, you don't really see NBA players and NFL players, gifting their teammates 10 Omegas. I mean, John Wick himself was sponsored by Carl F. Bucherer. Keanu Reeves wearing a Carl F. Bucherer in every movie. John Wick is the Carl F. Bucherer guy. And what does he give his stuntmen? a bunch of Rolexes. So it does just mean something. It is sort of a gift. It just, I want to give you a gift that's like, oh, hell yeah, like Rolex. And, it's kind of cool that exists socially, and whether they deserve that status, again, is, a matter of opinion. I think they make pretty great watches. They're pretty reliable. They keep better time than a lot of people realize. They keep insanely good time for an automatic watch. Yeah, Rolex is doing something right. And I think their strategy of selling as many precious metal and two-tone watches as they can is probably good, because when those factories come online, I think there's so much pent-up demand for like oyster perpetuals. They could probably just sell another million oyster perpetuals. If they had the capacity, all those bright colored oyster perpetuals, I think people would just buy them even if they weren't rare. I'd buy my wife a candy pink oyster perpetual 28 right now at list price. So, and I think I'm not alone. So, yeah, the wait list thing is, it builds on itself a little bit, but I think this sort of self-fulfilling spiral of demand is almost 5 years ago. Late 2021 was the peak of the sort of like, oh, you can flip this, they're worth more money than they're worth, try to get it because they hold their value, sort of spiraling demand thing. That's pretty far in the rearview mirror at this point. And yeah, I think there are a lot of people waiting in the wings that would just go buy an oyster perpetual for $6,000, $7,000 that can't, just because the production isn't there. But Rolex still is selling the million watches they make. And I'm sure as many of those are two-tones and diamond set as possible because they want to make money, and that's cool. But I do sort of expect exactly that. When 2029 comes online, I wouldn't be surprised if oyster perpetuals are easy to get again, because I can't imagine it being a long-term strategy for a basic steel oyster perpetual to be hard to get. And they'd even come out and said, "Oh, the scarcity is not our plan, guys." And some people just don't believe them. Like, yeah, we know it is. Shut up. But yeah, I tend to be more on the side of just like, Rolex just has crazy demand. It's hard to even fathom how strong the demand for Rolex is. It is on another level. Like 30% of the content I write is about Rolex, just because it's like 30% or more of like all search volume about watches is about Rolex, which is preposterous for one brand, given the number of brands that there are in the world. But it's sort of its own behemoth, and it's interesting sociologically, in a way, how it became what it is. But and some people have a natural contrarian reaction to that, and sort of have this natural reaction and say like, oh, Rolex isn't so hot. And I get that too. But once you put one on, or at least once I put one on, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Speaking of pretty sweet, if the sky's the limit, what watch do you buy yourself tomorrow?
Oh man, I should have been prepared for that one. Oh man, wow. I mean, there are so many wild independents doing crazy things. Oh man, there's also so many crazy complicated watches from big name brands that go for pretty good prices. I mean, I say a good price, I mean maybe it's retail is 150 grand and you can get it for 80, like a Zenith. Oh man, some of the Zenith 0 to 5 are some of the high-end ones are pretty crazy. Oh man, maybe a jade dial FP Jorn.
Okay.
I know everybody says that there's sort of this backlash now of people, just kind of like with Rolex, the contrarianism. There's the contrarianism about FP Jordan, and now I feel like the recent narrative is like, oh, didn't you know the finishing on Jordan movements isn't actually that good? Like, okay, maybe it's not Longa. I mean, I think they look pretty nice. And I'm not saying I'm not saying it's what I would spend that money on, given the price that it is, but yeah, and it's almost unavoidable as watch nerds. It's just like, yeah, that seems like the ultimate watch. Oh, but if I was spending 500 grand, I could just get this for 100 grand. Or, all these theoretical dollar figures that we spend time thinking about. Or maybe that's just me. But yeah.
Actually. So follow up sky's the limit question. If Luxury Bazaar gave you a blank check and unlimited access for one story, what would you want to investigate or write about?
I think it would be interesting to investigate the NATO trademark troll.
Mm.
Maybe I don't want that smoke though. That guy seems like bad news, man. I might you know, might end up shooting myself in the back of the head if I go too deep down that rabbit hole. But are you guys familiar with it?
Oh yeah. Oh my
okay.
God.
Of course you are. Of course you
Bob
are.
and I are big NATO guys to begin with, but yeah.
But how the heck does that happen? And like, who is this guy and how does he get away with it? Like, and he seems slippery. So it's not an easy one to research, but how this guy, Ronald Subo, I think is his name, how this guy keeps getting away with that is absolutely bizarre. It just kind of shows how once a court makes a certain wrong decision, it can just be like impossible to reverse and just like, oh, cool, I guess you get to just grift off the backs of small business owners for the rest of your life.
No, we've known entire companies had to change their names, like, it's unbelievable.
Dude, the Toxic NATO guy, I chat with him every now. He just stopped doing it because of he couldn't call himself Toxic NATOs anymore. He's like, you know what? How about I just stop doing this? Screw you guys. I'm going home. This isn't fun anymore. But no, that guy's the man.
No, that's a great choice. I was not expecting that one, but that's a great choice.
That is a really good choice. I'd love to read the article on that if you ever decide to do it. That'd be fun.
I was thinking of actually doing one. Speaking of scandals, the LA Times covered it pretty well. Are you guys familiar with the Nelson Holdo scandal?
Mm-mm.
So Nelson Holdo and his wife, Mimi Sadell Holdo, are huge jewelry watch scammers in Southern California and California in general. So they've just been scamming people left and right and getting arrested. And then for some reason, California keeps letting them out again and doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. I think probably 5 million plus. Some people are trying to total up the amount that they've stolen from people. It sounds like, if you guys are familiar with the timepiece gentleman scandal, it sounds like I've heard it described as a 10x timepiece gentleman.
Wow.
Which seems about right. But anyway, the LA Times did a pretty good piece on that lately. I was like, I might cover this Nelson Holdo case. So the LA Times did a whole in-depth coverage and they sent a photographer out. Oh my God, you guys are doing pretty good on this. But good for them for covering it. That's wild that they could just keep scamming people. It's amazing what people will believe with nice Instagram photos. Just keep spooling up new Instagram accounts. I mean, it's the definition of a con artist. They would just establish confidence in any way they could that they weren't scammers, and then they would scam them. But they had all these different businesses. Like, he had to close his business at one point because he was just like known that he was a scammer. And then his wife just opened one in the same location. And his wife still hasn't been arrested, by the way. So if you're out there buying watches, don't buy watches from Mimi Sadell. Stay away from that one.
Well, how do you spell their last name? I want to look this up.
Let me Nelson Holdo scam. So Mimi, aka Michelle, Meshell. Actually, last name Sol Hodo, SOHL-Holdo.
Okay, I got it.
But it looks like she goes under different aliases all the time,
of course,
as these people do. But so the Mimi at Sea was her store. They closed and they just still owe tons of people consignment money and product. Just do stuff on consignment, keep the money, keep the product, and just sort of Bernie Madoffing the money around as long as you can.
Wow.
Absolutely wild.
Well, I think that it's always good to close on a scandal. So, Rob, I really appreciate you joining us here this morning. It's been a great laugh, actually, the whole time. So I can see how it is that you're into comedy. Really appreciate your time here this morning, and really like the number of insights in your knowledge has been pretty impressive. So thanks for that.
Oh no, thanks for having me. This has been super fun. I really appreciate you having me on.
Perfect. So we also as usual like to thank our listeners for tuning in. Thanks, guys.
The Time to Calibrate podcast is a bi-weekly show and is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a question or a comment? Email us at timetocalibrate@gmail.com, or you can find us on Instagram at timetocalibrate. If you haven't given us a follow or a review yet, please do so. This helps platforms recommend us to like-minded listeners. You can also follow us individually on Instagram. I'm at Mark Time to Watch. Bob is at Time to Go 1978, and Brent is at Caliber 321. Also, be sure to check out Bob's Time to Go Travel and Timepieces YouTube channel, and be sure to visit thecalibratedwrist.com for all your watch-related news, editorials, and reviews. Lastly, if you like our show, do tell a friend. Heck, Tell lots of friends. We'd greatly appreciate it. That's it for now. T2C out.